This is what we've been working through for the last few weeks, and we've reached chapter 5. Now, what I want you to do is just turn to the end of the chapter. There's only one reference to God in this chapter. It's verse 21. So if you want to just start there, this is what it says. Now, I'm going to read this verse, and I just want you to go, what picture comes into your mind when you hear these words? Okay, so verse 21 says, "For your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths." Your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines. Do you think CCTV cameras? Do you think surveillance? Do you think, oh, we're being watched? Well, the key word, of course, is the word Lord. You'll see it's printed in capitals in your Bible. That's a reminder to you. It's a kind of special word. It's the only word in the whole Bible that's written in capitals. And it's a covenant word. It belongs to the world of relationship. It belongs to the world of the bond between a dad and his son, or his children, I should say. It belongs to the union between a husband and wife that's formed by their marital promises. Will you love this woman? Yeah, I will. Now, in this book, it's the Lord's voice that you will hear speaking through the Father as he addresses his family. And the woman wisdom that we've met on several occasions is just another way of saying the same thing. So in other words, the Lord is not head of security sitting viewing a bank of monitors trying to spot shoplifters. That is not the picture. Listen to what it says in chapter 2. I'm going to read you a couple of verses. It says, "For the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. He holds success in store for the upright. He's a shield to those whose walk is blameless." There is no one in the universe who wants you to succeed more than the Lord does. There is no one in the universe who's more concerned about your safety and protection than the Lord is. That's why he's given us this book. The question is whether you're up for thinking about it. At the end of the introduction goes first 7 verses of chapter 1. Solomon writes, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Do not be foolish. Come and learn. Come and engage with this life-giving, danger-avoiding, kingdom-inheriting wisdom. Right, I'm going to read the chapter. Proverbs chapter 5. Got it open? Listen to it carefully. "My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Turn your ear to my words of insight, that you may maintain discretion, and your lips may preserve knowledge. For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the way of life. Her paths wander aimlessly, but she does not know it. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house. lest you lose your honor to others and your dignity to one who is cruel. Lest strangers feast on your wealth and your toil enrich the house of another. At the end of your life you will groan. When your flesh and body are spent, you will say, how I hated discipline, how my heart spurned correction. I would not obey my teachers or turn my ear to my instructors, and I was soon in serious trouble in the assembly of God's people. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares? No, let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? For your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths. The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast. For lack of discipline they will die, led astray by their own great folly. Now, I guess if you hear that word wisdom, it's kind of easy to think that wisdom's about what goes on in your head. Or if you're a wee bit more informed, it affects your heart. And at the end of chapter 4, certainly that's where the writer has taken us. Verse 23 is a pretty important verse in Proverbs. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything else flows from it. But you'll notice in the previous verse, it refers to your whole body. And in fact, in that little section at the end there, there's quite a reference to aspects of your body. So it mentions your mouth, it mentions your eyes, it mentions your feet. It's interested in the whole of us. So wisdom applies to what you do with your body as much as what you do with your head. Chapter 5 is specifically about your body, not what you do with your body in the gym, what you do with your body in bed. In other words, it's about sex. This is the first of 3 fairly lengthy warnings about sexual immorality. It is amazing, isn't it? You and I are looking at this 3,000-year-old book that sounds as though it's just been written for the 21st century. Our sex-obsessed culture. And not written for those who are into casual sex. That's not who this is for. This is for the people who belong to a believing community. The assembly of God's people. Now, it's pretty clear from this chapter that God is pro-sex. This is his gift. You might have been surprised at the erotic language that you find in the middle of this chapter. Sexual pleasure, whether it's within marriage or it's out with marriage, is described in verse 19 and 20. Did you notice it? Did you catch the word? The word it's used is intoxication. As strong drink is powerful, so too is sex. It's why we need wisdom. And we're again listening to this father plead with his son to listen to his words and pay attention to his wisdom. But of course, hey, there's another voice. Not just the father's voice. There's a voice of this sweet, talking, adulterous woman. Now, it could equally be an adulterous man. It's just the way Proverbs has set it up. It's not sexist. Trouble can come from both sides. What is it that's on offer here? What is it that this woman is offering? Answer, well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? She is offering love. And central to this invitation to discover love is, of course, sex. You could describe it as free sex. And, and if we're honest, hey, that's what your body wants. That's why it's so appealing. Because it seems to be exactly what we're made for. Natural, normal, good. Anybody who raises it reservations are presented as being repressive and unhealthy. Yeah? But of course, it's not free. The sweet talk, verses 3 and 4, will leave a bitter taste. Verse 9, your reputation will get trashed. Watching the news recently? Seen any of this stuff going on? Verse 10, your bank account can get raided. That's the divorce settlement. Now the key phrase crops up in verse 4 and verse 11. In the end or at the end. Do you see what it's saying? Hey, there's no love at the end, just loneliness. This turns out not to be a route to life, but a road to regret. Verses 11 and 12. This is wisdom. And now he will show us the protection that God wants to provide for people like us living in a sex-obsessed society. Watch what he says. Number one, wisdom demands that you keep your distance. So the Father describes his wisdom as maintaining discretion in verse 2. Think about that word, discretion or discreet. If you're discreet, you're someone who doesn't engage in gossip. The discreet person keeps themselves separate from all that stuff. That's an aspect of discretion or discreetness. That's what the dad is asking. Look at verse 8, sorry. Do not go near the door of her house. In other words, stay away from those places, whether you meet her on a screen or in a magazine or in person. Stay away. Be separate. Proverbs describes sexual pleasure, as we've seen, as intoxication. In other words, it's like boarding a train. Once you embark and the doors close, you are no longer in control. You are going where it is going, so you better make sure you're on the right train. The woman is described as giving no thought to the way of life. Her feet go down to death. When it comes to relationships like marriage, if you're a Christian, separate yourself from everyone who gives no thought to their way of life. They are going in an entirely opposite direction to you. Do not join them. That is the first advice of wisdom. Separation. Here's the second advice. Wisdom warns us that despising discipline is deadly. The Father predicts how this is all going to end if his Son doesn't pay attention to this wisdom, but is wooed by the sweet talk. So have a look at verses 11 and 12. At the end of your life you will groan when your flesh and body are spent. You will say, how I hated discipline, how my heart spurned correction. If you've been with us over the last few weeks, One of the ways that wisdom describes us is as simple. Now, that is not a compliment. When wisdom uses the word simple, it means gullible, easily taken in. Someone once said to me, "Did you know they've removed the word gullible from the dictionary?" And I said, "Have they?" Yeah, you get the idea. We are easily taken in. The book of Proverbs has little confidence in our ability to think clearly about life. So if you were here when we did chapter 3, lean not on your own understanding. Do not be wise in your own eyes. If you and I are going to make our way through this dangerous world, we need a teacher. We need to submit to discipline. We need to be open to correction. You will not make it without those things. The book of Genesis tells the story of Joseph. Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. He was hated by his brothers. He was sold into slavery in Egypt. And he came into contact with the advances of his boss's wife, whom he made an enemy of by refusing her invitation to sleep with her, and he ended up with an indefinite sentence in the king's prison. Now, the Bible is honest enough to tell you that discipline is not pleasant. No, this is tough stuff, as you can see in the life of Joseph. But ask Joseph which he would rather have chosen: a night of fake love with his master's wife, or an encounter with a loving plan of God that reconciled his family. Which would you choose? A man who submits to God's discipline. Let me ask you, what's your painful discipline? Singleness? A broken heart? A difficult marriage? Bereavement? Dashed hopes of some other kind? The point about God's discipline is it's not motivated like my discipline often is, which is annoyance or irritation that my life is being churned around. God's discipline, these things don't affect God, by the way. God doesn't get annoyed, he doesn't get irritated. Nothing from outside affects him. His discipline is motivated by his desire that you might succeed and be safe. When the bad stuff comes, when our plans are frustrated, keep that in your head. We read it in chapter 3 and verses 11 and 12. Don't despise the Lord's discipline, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. Chapter 3, verses 11 and 12. God has got more to offer you and I than sexual pleasure and happy marriage. He's got a way bigger plan than that. Let me bring you one last thing to kind of, so goes separation, goes discipline, then it goes wisdom contradicts the cry of our culture. So we live in a culture that says what? It says, hey, my body is mine. That's why we've got this assisted suicide bill going through Parliament just now. I can do what I like. It's my body. Or the whole abortion debate. It's my body. I decide what happens here. Now, if you go to Corinth, the believers at Corinth had a slightly different take on it. They thought to themselves that their soul was the only thing that mattered, the bit inside. And their body was a bit like a disposable container. What does it matter? Do you want to sleep with the prostitutes? Your body's a disposable container. Doesn't matter. That was Corinth's argument. Now, what Paul wants to teach them is the resurrection has massive implications for your body. It has a future. Now, why does my body have a future in the world to come? The answer is because by his death, Christ purchased us for God. This is what he says. Listen to it. You are not your own, right? 21st century thinking. No, you are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your body. You got the wisdom of Proverbs in your head? In this sex-obsessed culture, keep your distance, accept discipline, honor God with your body. Now, we're going to look at the second half of the chapter, verses 15 onwards. And the second half of this chapter, from verse 15, shows you the correct context for sexual relations. God is pro-sex. It's his gift. He wants people to enjoy it in the right context. The context that he offers us here is marriage. Now, as you know, marriage makes its appearance pretty early in the Bible. It's there in the Garden of Eden, where you and I hear the comment, "For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." And when you look at the Garden of Eden, you watch two people who become one, sharing their spiritual, social, and physical life together. They're in this. They're a team. There's no competition going on in Eden. They drink from the same source. And that's the picture that Proverbs uses. Now, pretty obviously, in Solomon's time there were no water boards delivering running water to a whole range of people's homes. You had to have your own private supply. You had to have a well or a spring. And it wasn't there to meet your neighbor's needs. It was there to meet your needs. That's verses 15 to 17. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Be faithful to your marriage partner. Verses 16 and 17. Should your springs overflow in the street, your streams of water in the public squares, let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. You don't want your wife sharing her sexual favors with the neighbors. And what he is picturing here is marital faithfulness. And it's not dutiful faithfulness, it's enduring faithfulness. You see, he refers to this woman here as the wife of your youth, which is just a kind of polite way of describing she's getting on a bit. She's not in the first flush of youth. And yet her husband rejoices in her. There's an attractiveness about her, but it's not necessarily physical attractiveness. The words that are used are grace and love, a loving doe and a graceful deer. She's described in these words, and he rejoices in her, and there's an enduring physical relationship to this situation. Now, you might know this, but marriage is intended as a picture of the gospel. Christ describes himself as a bridegroom. He calls his church his bride. Now, the last three verses of the chapter, for your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines your path. The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sin hold them fast. Remind us that we don't live in Eden. That's not where we live. We live in a world where sin makes its presence felt. Now, what does that mean for marriage? It means this: that people approach marriage with this question in their heads. What is in this for me? The question that is in the minds of most of us as we get married is one of self-interest. What's in this for me? Children, money, sex, security. Aye. What happens when two sinners share a small space is that our selfishness collides. And if there's ever to be any hope of my marriage reflecting the gospel, my self-interest needs to be replaced with self-sacrifice. Jesus, or rather the Bible says, husbands, love your wives. How? As Christ loved the church. Wives, submit to your husbands as the church submits to Christ. The power in Christian marriage comes from the cross of Jesus. As we allow him to shape what's going on in our hearts and our minds. As we allow him to bring the delight of keeping our mouths closed and doing what's good for our partners. Now, Proverbs describes this marriage where a husband rejoices in the woman he married a long time ago, and she is characterized by love and grace. That's the gospel. Let me describe a marriage that I've observed recently. He had been a highly gifted and successful individual in his own field. This is not made up, by the way, this is real. But he contracted a progressive and debilitating illness. It would leave him hardly able to communicate and needing everything to be done for him. But of the few words that he spoke, his sympathy was not for himself, but for the work he was causing to his wife. There was nothing in this for her except hard work, tears, and loss. This was going to end in death. But day in, day out, he received loving and gracious care with no hint of complaint or resentment. Now that is an imperfect, dim, and incomplete picture of the love that Jesus reveals at the cross and that God has in store for his people in the coming kingdom. The gospel is the story of the unconditional love of God the Father, expressed in the hard work, tears, and loss of God the Son for a wayward and helpless people that will be consummated when he comes for his own. I'm going to finish by saying two things. Okay, number one, it's because of that there is hope for adulterers, for the sexually scarred, for the abused. Sexual sin is not the unforgivable sin. This hope is found in beginning to acknowledge that God sees every aspect of our lives and confessing our sin. It's found in beginning to form a relationship of trust with God that lives within the constraints and commands, not least in relation to sex. Number one, there is hope for all who are wounded sexually, which is all of us. Number two, it also has things to say to those of you who are single. Maybe you're single because marriages has never worked out for you. Maybe you're single because your marriage partner has died. Maybe you're single because you're same-sex attracted and you're trying to live a celibate life. Or maybe you're single because your partner has left you. Understand this. There will be no husbands and wives in heaven, just brothers and sisters. The best life of the new creation will be the single life. And the church needs to work out how to honor single people. We're good at taking meals to the new mums. We're good at celebrating people who are getting married and all that goes with that. We need to learn how to celebrate singleness. It's part of God's plan for his people. The New Testament places a high value on devoted singles, and so should we.